My name is Jessica Monroe, and let me start by saying, my family loves pretending. We weren't raised to be honest. We were raised to keep up appearances, smile at the table, and sweep every ounce of dysfunction under the rug. I was always the quiet one, the observer, the too sensitive niece who never quite fit into the mold. But over the years, I took notes. I listened. I remembered every fake smile, every cutting remark made when backs were turned, every time they rolled their eyes at me across the dinner table. The truth is, while they were busy performing, I was busy writing the real script. And when the invitation came for this year's family reunion, I knew this was my moment, my cue, my spotlight. The reunion was being hosted at Aunt Lila's house, a grand colonial estate in Connecticut where judgment was baked into every brick. It was where I was once scolded for wearing sneakers to brunch, where my cousin Emma announced her engagement with a speech that sounded straight from a Hallmark movie. This time I arrived differently. I wore black, sharp and clean, not out of rebellion, but to match the tone of what was about to unfold. Clutched in my hand was a folder. Inside it, printed on crisp white paper, was the real story. My story. Their story. A script I had written based on the last 15 years of lies, betrayals, and manipulation they thought I hadn't noticed. I didn't come to fight. I came to perform. Aunt Lila greeted me at the door with her usual thin smile, the kind that barely stretched beyond her lipstick. "Jessica, how nice of you to come this year," she said, her voice syrupy sweet. I simply nodded and stepped inside, glancing at the familiar decor, portraits of ancestors who probably would have hated me just the same. I could already hear the hum of chatter from the backyard. Laughter, clinking glasses, fake compliments bouncing off one another like a poorly rehearsed play. They didn't notice I was early, or maybe they didn't care. But I had one thing they didn't expect: control of the narrative. As I made my way through the house, memories surfaced with every step. This wasn't just a reunion, it was a stage. And I was ready to pull the curtain back. The backyard was set up like a garden party out of a magazine: fairy lights, catered appetizers, a jazz trio softly playing near the roses. And of course, the usual seating chart drama. They had placed me at the kids' table again, at 29, right next to my 12-year-old cousin who still eats string cheese with a fork. I smiled. Perfect. I grabbed a flute of champagne and stood to the side, watching as they buzzed around like bees in designer dresses and tailored jackets. They didn't see me yet. Not really. They saw the same Jessica who once cried during charades because Uncle Carl mocked her voice. But that Jessica didn't exist anymore. This one came with a script. And today, I wasn't playing the quiet one. I waited until everyone had a drink in their hand, their mouths full of shrimp skewers and half-truths. Aunt Lila tapped her glass, ready to give her annual speech about family, love, and tradition. That was my cue. I stepped forward, gently, taking the mic from her hand. Gasps, murmurs, a few awkward chuckles. "Good afternoon," I said. "I wrote something, a story, a short one." You could see them shift in their seats. No one likes surprises at a Monroe event, but I wasn't looking for approval. I was looking for honesty, and the only way to get it was to tell the truth they'd spent years avoiding. I opened my folder, cleared my throat, and began to read. "Once upon a time," I began, "there was a family who loved their image more than they loved each other. They smiled at funerals, posed at birthdays, and judged each other in silence at every meal." A few laughs erupted, the nervous kind. I didn't flinch. I continued, narrating scenes they all recognized but pretended were fiction. The time Cousin Rachel spread rumors about Aunt May's divorce, the way Uncle Don shamed his son for not making varsity, how Grandma pretended not to notice the bruises on Emily's wrist. Real moments, dressed up as parable. But every line hit, like a confession. Some eyes widened, Some narrowed, others looked away. But no one stopped me. By the time I hit page 3, the party was silent. Even the jazz trio had stopped playing. I paused, not for effect, but to let the weight of my words hang in the summer air like humidity. I looked at my cousin Emma, who always called me dramatic. She was biting her lip. Uncle Carl, who once told me no man would ever take me seriously, was red as a beet. I felt my heartbeat, steady and grounded. This was no longer a performance. It was an exorcism. I read on, exposing secrets that had simmered under the surface of every gathering, every fake toast. I wasn't cruel. I was accurate. The difference is important. Truth has a way of sounding harsh only to those who benefit from the lie. I ended, the reading with a line that wasn't just for them. It was for me. The family in the story, I said, learned that a perfect picture can still hide a broken frame. Then I closed the folder. No mic drop. No dramatic exit. Just silence. Aunt Lila tried to smile again, but it trembled at the corners. Someone clapped. It was slow, unsure. Then another, and another. Not out of celebration, but recognition. That, what I said was true. That I had turned their performance into a mirror. And they couldn't look away. I walked over to the kids' table and picked up my glass. My 12-year-old cousin looked at me like I was a superhero. I winked. I didn't come here to ruin the reunion. I came to reclaim it. For years, I swallowed every insult, every dismissal, every backhanded compliment. Today, I served it back cold and unseasoned. I wasn't looking for revenge. I was looking for release. And judging by the silence that followed me wherever I walked, I think I found it. That night, the texts started coming in. Cousin Rachel apologized for middle school. Uncle Don sent a heart emoji, his version of, "I'm sorry." Even Grandma called. She didn't say much, just that she was proud. That one nearly broke me, because deep down, I still wanted their approval. But more than that, I wanted my truth to matter. And it finally did. My name is Jessica Monroe. And for the first time in my life, I wasn't background noise at a family event. I was the narrator, and I wrote the story they never had the courage to tell. The next morning, I woke up earlier than usual. There was sunlight creeping through the blinds of the guest room, dust particles dancing like tiny stars in the air. I laid there for a moment, absorbing what had happened. It wasn't a dream. I did that. I stood in front of my entire family and spoke truth to silence. My hands didn't shake. My voice didn't crack. I felt powerful, not in a loud, dominant way, but like someone who finally chose themselves over acceptance. I got up, folded the dress I wore, and slipped back into jeans and a hoodie. The performance was over, but I was still Jessica, the new version, the unfiltered one. I made my way downstairs to grab coffee. The house was quiet, which was rare in Aunt Lila's palace. Usually by this time, cousins would be yelling, coffee would be brewing, and someone would be playing early 2000s pop in the kitchen. But today, nothing. It was like everyone was still absorbing the aftermath. As I poured myself a cup, Aunt Lila walked in. She didn't say anything at first, just watched me. I nodded politely. She finally spoke. That took guts. I shrugged and replied, "No more than it took to ignore everything all these years." Her face twitched slightly, but she didn't argue. She just poured her own coffee and sat quietly. That was the biggest conversation we'd had in 10 years. Later, I stepped out onto the porch. Uncle Carl was there smoking one of his awful cigars. I almost turned back around, but he surprised me. "Jessica," he said without his usual sarcasm. "That was brave." I didn't expect that. I thanked him, and we stood in awkward silence for a moment. Then he added, "I was wrong about you. 4 words I never thought I'd hear. Maybe they didn't change everything, but they mattered, especially coming from him. I nodded, not wanting to break whatever spell had made him human for a second. Sometimes the smallest admissions carry the biggest weights. Throughout the day, more people pulled me aside. Some apologized, some didn't know what to say. A few asked if I'd write their stories one day. It was weird being seen. Not as a problem, not as a burden, but as a person. The script I wrote wasn't meant to destroy them. It was meant to remind them of what they did, what they ignored, what they allowed. I didn't expect forgiveness or applause, just acknowledgement. And slowly, it was coming. The power wasn't in humiliating them. The power was in finally feeling heard. As I packed my bag to leave, I found a note slipped inside. No name. Just one line. You said what we were all too afraid to. It nearly brought me to tears. Not because I needed validation, but because I wasn't alone. That's the danger of silence. It makes you think you're the only one who sees the cracks. But once someone speaks up, the illusion shatters. I zipped my suitcase and looked around the room one last time. I wasn't leaving in shame this year. I was leaving in truth. And there's no better luggage than that. The ride home was quiet, peaceful. I played a playlist I made years ago called Someday They'll Understand. Back then, it was a fantasy. Now it felt real. I thought about every past reunion where I cried in the bathroom, every whispered insult, every time I was the punchline. And then I thought about yesterday, about that mic, that moment, that truth. I smiled to myself. I had changed the narrative, not just theirs, mine too. For the first time in my life, I wasn't editing myself to fit into their story. I was writing my own. The messages kept coming for days, some cousins asking for coffee, a few aunts checking in. Even Emma sent a meme. It wasn't much, but it was something. I didn't know what the next reunion would look like. Maybe they'd go back to pretending. Maybe not. But even if they did, it wouldn't matter, because they'd never see me the same way again. And more importantly, I'd never see myself the same again either. That's the real win. Not the applause, not the nods. But the shift inside that says, you showed up for yourself. Loud and clear. In the weeks that followed, I started writing more. Not about my family, but about truth. About silence. About the masks we wear to survive gatherings where we're expected to smile and lie. I shared pieces online. Strangers messaged me saying, "You told my story." And just like that, I realized something huge. When you tell your truth out loud, you give others permission to do the same. That was never my plan. But maybe it was the best outcome of all. Not just healing myself, but helping others find the courage to start. One afternoon, I got an email from a local magazine. They had seen my piece. They wanted to publish it. I stared at the screen, stunned. The girl they once called too sensitive, too quiet, too dramatic, was now being heard. By more than just family. By strangers who didn't owe her anything. And maybe that's what made it so special. I clicked reply and typed 2 words. I'm honored. And I meant it. Because for the first time, I wasn't just writing for myself. I was writing for every Jessica who'd ever been silenced. So here I am, months later, still Jessica Monroe. But different. Stronger. Louder. Wiser. That reunion changed me. Not because they clapped. Not because they cried. But because I found my voice and used it. And once you do that, there's no going back. I'm still the girl who remembers too much, who feels too deeply. But now, I know that's not a flaw. It's my gift. And if I ever walk into another family reunion, it won't be as their shadow. It'll be as their narrator. With my own script. My own truth. And a pen that doesn't shake anymore,